This is part 2 of my video talking about egg maturity. So when it comes to trying to improve upon getting a lot of immature eggs at retrieval, it's important to understand what the causes are. Looking back, we might see, okay, there was a lot of asynchronous growth of the follicles. We even call it like a split cohort, where some can kind of lead the pack and there can be many small to medium-sized follicles lagging behind. Now, this is something we frequently encounter with women in their 40s, especially if they have diminished ovarian reserve. Even at a younger age, they may have a tendency towards having slightly high FSH levels earlier onset in the cycle. It can lead to some follicles leading the pack, and those larger maturing follicles can actually release factors that suppress the growth of some of the smaller ones. This is where something called priming can be really effective. So we use estrogen in the form of patches in combination with a 3-day series of GnRH antagonists, Cetrotide, Ganirelix, for example, shots. And this is a very potent way in the luteal phase, in the lead up to a stimulation cycle, to suppress early FSH release. And that is in hopes to avoid that phenomenon where you have breakaway follicles. It can also be achieved with birth control taken at the beginning of the cycle, started early, and being on it for a minimum of 10 to 14 days may also help with follicular synchrony. Once you take your last pill, you come in about 3 to 4 days later, and that's when you start your shots. While priming can help to get the follicles on the same page and growing more synchronously, it's not necessarily for everyone and something I would do for every single patient. It can delay the start of the cycle, add extra steps, and I recommend it in cases where there's evidence that there could be a clear benefit, and that benefit could outweigh the inconvenience and the timing factor. Another key factor is the trigger shot, which is the last shot or set of shots that you're going to take right before the egg retrieval, 36 hours later. And this is the final step that is so important for maturation of the eggs inside the follicle. There are many different ways to do this. It's really important to navigate it carefully because you don't want to give too high of dose of HCG because that can increase the risk of hyperstimulation syndrome. But if someone got Lupron only or very, very low doses of HCG, there may be room for improvement by giving more HCG and being a bit more aggressive in a subsequent cycle to try to improve maturity. And finally, once you've seen how someone's stimulation went and how they behave in response to these meds, it can be a possible strategy to say, okay, this is someone that might take a little bit longer to mature, even though the follicles look ready on scan. So let's give them an extra day. Sometimes giving that extra day can push some of those eggs that were on the cusp of being mature into maturity. You also don't want to keep pushing with no end in sight because that can lead to a lot of degenerated or post-mature eggs. So it's a balancing act. And lastly, we have to think about factors such as having PCOS. Ovarian environment can be affected by factors such as insulin resistance, and that may make it harder for the eggs to properly mature. So it's important to tailor the protocol accordingly and address any metabolic disturbances that could make a real difference in how they respond. It may improve maturity and even the quality of the eggs. So I hope by explaining why immaturity is a problem and what we can do about it and the things that we can look into, that this video was helpful to you. Put your questions in the comments.